West End, I think of
a place I always wanted to live.
Home, history, and neighbors.
Big houses, trees, busy streets, pizza joints, the washed-up laundry. Oh, and a certain air of exclusivity and class division. Yeah, all that.
Funky people who are committed to the preservation and upkeep of the neighborhood and lifestyle.
a warm, friendly neighborhood that is diverse and enjoyable. What I love about the West End is
the architecture, the walkability, the relative diversity.
The people, the beautiful old homes.
Elizabeth Park, an absolutely enchanting space any time of the year. Additionally, the walkability of the streets, even with the traffic.
Good restaurants, walkability.
friendly neighbors, nice restaurants, and cultural opportunities. What I would like to change about the West End is
Make it even more diverse to get rid of the socio-eco, no-fuss sofa idea.
The disparity between the high-end streets of the West End versus the low-end streets south of Farmington.
The lack of bookshops. This place should not lack bookshops. Jumping Frog moved, but that void remains to be filled. The class and often race divide that exists here. The poor folks eye Mansion Row with awe, longing, and the residents of Mansion Row eye them back with suspicion, fear, or outright disdain. I've heard them. The economic prospects of those of us not fortunate enough to own property in these neighborhoods / section of the city needs to increase. How does that happen?
I'm stumped.
the negative view of it, because it is in Hartford. I don't know why people are concerned about their neighborhood. I would like a bit more development around Farmington Avenue. Outside of that, I love the West End. Oh, one last thing. I get a bit concerned about people living but not engaging with the whole neighborhood. I've heard unsettling news about neighbors giving the community trouble. That concerns me.
So you drive down Farmington, or you're coming from downtown and you're driving up Farmington Avenue into West Hartford. So first you pass by Sigourney Street, which is like there's Aetna and the police department, which is kind of businessy. And then you drive further down and you get to the historical section. And then you drive further down and you get to this whole like artsy, I mean, I don't want to say Brooklyn because it's different than Brooklyn, but it's got this Brooklyn-esque kind of vibe to it. And then you keep going down and you get into West Hartford. And then you get to the whole like upper class, nice houses. That's riding into West Hartford. You know, I walked here to Saints and I tried out the Japanese food next door.
Starting from Farmington Avenue, put this going north. Okay, now I know you know about Harriet Beecher Stowe up here. You know about Mark Twain. It's really our limit for going in that direction, and we go up to Capitol Avenue, and we go up to, what's that?
South Whitney.
South Whitney. Go past South Whitney, and we go over to Tremont, and in that area, we come back down. This is primarily, mostly the West End, and so this is where we mostly travel.
I still see, you know, I see young families out walking and playing, convenience, proximity, diversity, tree-laden, and we just love everything about it.
At first I didn't really want to live over here, but I come to like it. It's a real nice, definitely a real nice looking area.
We're a walking neighborhood. We know our neighbors. We meet each other on the streets. Whether they're just walking to the park or they're just, you know, walking their dogs, they just walk.
I don't let my children walk anywhere in this neighborhood without me spraying them.
I've always been very city-ish, and I think it's because growing up in suburban Manchester, I just never felt like that was really for me. And I've always liked city living, you know? I always came up here to go to things.
And when people walk, I mean, they see people. They get to know neighbors. They say hello.
We have about maybe 7 buses coming this way. You can just about get anywhere you want to.
Growing up as a young woman of color, it's just a dangerous identity.
Well, it's interesting because you have parts of it that's college, and then you have the historical. I mean, it's such a diverse area, and it's because there are so many different types of people. I mean, you have your young college students, your professionals, you have your Hispanics, you have your blacks.
People have front porches.
You have your Caucasians, and they're all living in this small environment or small area. And I think that's the one thing. I think that this area is the most diverse than anywhere else in Hartford, because there are certain areas of Hartford where it's like just blacks or just Latinos. And I feel like just in this small, tiny little area is the most diverse. I mean, you have just all different types of restaurants, and you see all different types of people just walking the street.
My sense of community is a little different than some of the other people's focus in the neighborhood. Connecting with people from different backgrounds, helping people, hanging out in the backyard, not having fancy events, dinners, expensive wine, stuff like that.
Yeah, I sense that some people are confined to their backyards. We're more front yard oriented here. I think it's because of the porches. Maybe it's just me, but I live on my porch.
Oh yeah, we live on our porches.
Stop and shop.
Shop right?
And we go to Seatown.
Well, I mean, it's only half a mile, and it has been a lot different to be in the West End. I mean, in a positive way. I mean, we had to move because Walgreens bought the land from the landlord, and after 19 years, our lease was up. But we love our clientele, we love where we are, so we just kept looking around the area until something opened up, and it just so happened the former Cheese and Stuff location opened up.
There were times when I really felt like we had everything. I mean, Cheese and Stuff really filled.
Really was a big.
Well, first it was the A&P. Then Finest on Farmington, and then when they left,
and the old down-to-earth co-op morphed into more of a real store. You know, eventually went from being a co-op
to being Cheese and Stuff. The co-op became Cheese and Stuff.
And you could get, really good produce and kitchenware, stuff like that.
A lot of the people who make the decisions about the West End live over there. And I call that, in the white area, up there. And the people up there are like, ooh. And their decisions have killed the businesses here.
Well, the one thing that I think they should have is a 24-hour store.
We have a lot of restaurants now.
And it has been really awesome to be on the same block with Monte Alban, Toussaint's, the Ethiopian restaurant. I mean, it's more of an eating corner now.
But what we really need is something to cater to a 16 to 24. Because there's really no place for those kids to be productive in the West End.
Seriously, 24-hour store, something. 24-hour restaurant, and something.
The major blow, the real knockout, was when they moved that bus stop into the middle of the road. The problem with it is that people are crossing in and out of the road to get to that bus stop, and when they get off the bus, and the people walking are just taking their time. I'm telling you, this is the only place in the world that I know where you're supposed to cross in the middle of the block.
Well, a true pipe dream would be an independent bookstore, but they can't even support that in West Hartford Center, so it's not going to happen here.
You know, we have a lot of people from surrounding areas coming to the West End and supporting our businesses. We've got a lot of social gathering places. You've got Tisane, Half Door. We've got a local grocery store, and it's all within walking distance. You know what I love about the West End? Is that we all really, you know, we get to know one another.
If you're up late and you're working and you need some supplies or you need a snack, like you should be able to go and get yourself a snack. There should be a 24-hour spot.
I'd like to see a more developed streetscape. I'd really like for that lot next to Burger King not to be vacant. You know, some kind of storefront, some kind of activity.
Burger King could go too. But a bagel shop.
A bagel shop.
I think things should be open.
A bagel. Oh, a bagel shop would be, I mean, some kind of bakery it would always be nice.
You know what would be great? A little consignment store, thrift store, something like that.
Oh, we'll make other kinds of foods available. I mean, like hot dogs. I mean, if it's doable. We don't want to stretch out too thin because we don't want to take away from the falafel. We want to make sure that we have the best falafel on the planet. We love quality. And we would only put it out if we tried it and it was the best hot dog in the world.
So if you walk into Tisane's, you can see like a college student typing away on their laptop, or like two older women sitting in the corner and drinking coffee and talking. And then you have people like myself who are in meetings and they're talking about the arts and whatever. But if there was a 24-hour spot, like I would definitely stay. I mean, a 24-hour store and like a 24-hour Chinese food restaurant, that would be great.
The seminary is such a wonderful part of Hartford. It's a gorgeous spot. When potential students are visiting the school, we always show off the West End. And then they can walk over to Farmington Avenue and go to the drugstore and the grocery store and the restaurant. So it's actually a nice draw for us.
You know, that church on the corner of Whitney and Farmington, that is a great resource for the community. From food banks to, they used to have the old farmer's market, to clothes, if you need clothes. They're just there to help.
Well, like the seminary school, I don't know, like what do they do?
We have people in the West End who come and take classes that they are interested in. Anyone can audit any of our classes here.
I don't think they do much of anything at all. I don't think the Hartford Seminary or the law school or the Church of the Living God have much to do.
Well, as long as I've been at the law school, the deans over and over have thought about taking the soccer field away from the community. But Tommy Ritter, who is a West Ender and on the Yukon Board of Trustees, has made it very clear that community relations are important. So the deans do know now that it's important to be a good neighbor.
We have 25 to 30 students who live in campus housing on both sides of the White Building. One is on the law school side and one is on Girard Street.
You just don't really feel them doing anything good for the neighborhood. It's just like, I don't, like what, how? Okay.
I don't think we have a community outreach person. We're a graduate school. We focus on training lawyers. So we don't have the kind of programming that would be interesting to the community. We advertise on campus for events. I mean, we could do a movie night or something, but we don't.
You know, I take that back. The law school has had an impact. I mean, the mere presence of an institution creates an impact. The law school has been a benefit to the community. I mean, I have a garden plot there, kids play soccer there. My kids grew up playing soccer there.
I just don't know what they would do that someone like me would want to go and join. Like, I just don't see what they contribute.
We hope that people know that they are welcome to come to our free lectures. We also just installed a meditative labyrinth at 76 Sherman Street, and that's open to the public. We encourage people to come over and use it. The problem is you can't see it from the road, so you have to go behind the building. It's open. It's on the Worldwide Labyrinth Locator list.
The economic impact is pretty significant, I think. I mean, teachers and students, we all go to Ichiban for a meal, to Seine for coffee, Half-Door for a drink.
Our daughter is about to start at Noah Webster, so...
I think it's terrible what they did to that school. It has destabilized families in the neighborhood. You can't... The magnet schools are not a good thing. I mean, the whole point is racial diversity, and it is stupid the way they've carried it out.
And it's a nice actual school for her to go to.
I mean, the whole point is racial diversity. And you have instances of white kids who live in the neighborhood who can't go to that school. And the majority of the kids who come in are African and American and Hispanic, so
It's less diverse.
the suburban kids who are white, who live in the Granbys, Simsburys, and Avons, they don't come to that school because their schools are good. The suburban kids who come in, Noah Webster is attracting kids from Windsor, East Hartford, Bloomfield, and Britain, and they're mostly black and Latino. So it remains racially unbalanced. It is 72% black and Hispanic to 28% white. And the white kids who live in the neighborhood, who don't get into the lottery, are forced to go elsewhere. And the irony, and this is an irony. The irony is this. In this instance, we are taking in blacks and excluding whites.
And it is adversely affecting the neighborhood. It is affecting the real estate values in the neighborhood.
And then, well, the other element, as we said, the majority of minorities are coming in, except for in the lower grades, the pre-K, the 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, because, well, suburban people use it as free daycare.
Right.
And as soon as their kids are old enough to go to a real school, they pull them out. By which point, the neighborhood kids have been excluded from their neighborhood school. And if you sort of get rid of that little bubble in the lower grades, you would see the diversity of that school plummet way below its targets.
Right.
If a family moves to the West End, they can't say that their kids will go to a neighborhood school because they just don't know.
And it's made the neighborhood, well, less diverse.
Like when our kids were growing up, there was a whole core of friends that went to school together, that played together, and now it's really different. It's hit or miss, it's very scattered. Kids are going to different schools. If you don't live on our block, we don't know you. Or if we don't meet up in the park,
Well, I mean, it was beautiful. I mean, look, I think it was like Sesame Street, I mean, there was these young families, not on Oxford Street, but, between Martin and Warrenton and Beacon. So our oldest child, who's turning 31, she had friends close by to play with, and they all kind of got along. I mean, they were the rainbow kids. They all had these different backgrounds, and, we were, I think, very loving and caring and without barriers. But over time, I saw some barriers, and I heard some comments that were made.
some people were a little uncomfortable. And they would make comments to me like, my kid only goes to birthday parties of white kids. They made an effort to be sure there were enough white kids in their kids' classes. And then I'm frustrated they would start talking about when their kids became of middle school age, the flight syndrome, because at that time, Noah Webster only went up to the 6th grade. So around 5th grade, you'd hear all these questions like, well, where are you going to send your kids to school? But we knew a lot of families that had sent their kids to Cork Middle and Hartford Public, and they seemed to do okay. So, well, that became the family plan. And besides, we couldn't afford private school.
Well, not everyone has Elizabeth Park, but some neighborhoods do have really great parks nearby. But this is the most beautiful park.
Well, you know, they could do something with the litter, you know, picking up the little papers and the bottles and cans and things.
One thing is the community garden you find in Knox Parks. Up here, in our community garden, we're fighting about getting the inside done, and we want the outside done good too, which is the sidewalk. And they say there's nothing that can be done for that. Not until MDC come and do their work within the street, then we can do the sidewalk. When will this be? Who knows? Who knows? No one knows. I'll put forth the proposal, I'll take it to WECA, and they say, we can't do it. Then why can't you give me the limitation for my proposal so I would know what I could present? We need priority. And we need individuals that is going to take on the responsibility that is in regards to a purpose. It's like the street right now, the sidewalk. If you walk up and down these streets, I mean, it's not safe at all. We should have someone responsible for the cleaning. WECA, they say don't have the money. If I had a house here, I would definitely be concerned about my property and the value of my property. Would you like to come over and live in this area? You can go into West Hartford and look at all the streets, and you can look at how clean everything is, and then you could come back and compare here. It's not the same thing at all.
We made some flower beds so the West End could look like what it's supposed to look like. But now we have a different approach.
You know, I started just cleaning up around my garden. Before I knew it, I'm cleaning up the whole street. And then people started to come in and help, you know, and it got bigger and bigger, and so, okay.
Okay, so we started cleaning up.
It needs more parks, just more stuff. The kids, something for the kids to do.
The Shell lot, I would like to see that flourish. I mean, it's parking lot right now.
There used to be stuff to do. I mean, we get a whole bunch of people together and work on these beds on Boulevard, but we've kind of lost some of that cohesiveness.
It was like, you know, you find a buddy and you work on a bed and it'll just get done.
But some stuff didn't get done. Like I said,
We got that big load of mulch through West End Civic Association and spread that around because everybody wants beautification, you know?
Ooh, this place needs it, the parks need it, Farmington Avenue needs it.
You know, most of the plants, I mean, a lot of them anyways, I mean, they're donated plants from different individuals, I mean, including myself.
I would like to see more beautification, you know, on like Farmington Avenue. It's just, I don't think there's much of an aesthetic in that sense.
There were some accidents where Beacon meets West Boulevard because some of the plants had gotten so tall. So we had to take them out and replace them with new ones.
You know, those accidents we had with the tall plants? Well, you know, we thought we'd go and we'd start pulling them up. And so we asked for help. The help never came. There were a lot of opinions about what we should do, about how we should go about pulling up the plants, but help never showed up.
I am very happy with my level of green space. I have my backyard, I have a plot at the law school, which is half a block from the park that I walk in. I think there are plenty of meeting places depending on where you are in your life. There's Tissane's for coffee. Young people with young children meet up at the playground. Some say the concerts at Elizabeth Park.
Which attracts 650 people.
There's no central meeting place.
Tissane's no, because it's a little bit pricey. I mean, some people go there, but some people don't.
The farmer's market? I think it's a nice meeting place, especially when they take food stamps. But that's still not a community gathering place at this point.
I know some people that go to Subway, but then other people don't.
You know, we tried to get a center for the West End. You know, the children had no place to go in the summertime, just out in the street. So I worked hard. We worked hard, letters and phone calls and everything. And then it happened. The center was established.
We had a vision for a community center. An effort was made to create a community center. We had a community organizer, and she decided that what was really needed was real community organizing. So, rules were drawn up, a board was created, all the things that you need to do for a nonprofit.
And the executive director, Daryl Gardner, well, you know, he knew Eddie Perez and Elizabeth Horton Chef wanted to get something for the neighborhood, for her side of the neighborhood. And so it happened that the community center was established. You know, and we fought to get the center. And we could have kept it. But when it came time to allocate the money, they didn't hire us. They hired strangers.
Daryl never, and I saw this a lot. Daryl and a lot of other people never, ever trusted Wika. Absolutely no trust at all. Because he's black and they're white.
I just pulled out. I pulled out. You know, I had heard some things that happened with the money. You know, people talk, right? He calls me up. I said, what do you want to talk about? I mean, I knew what he wanted to talk about. I heard the center was in trouble, but what do you want to talk about? You ain't got no money. You're broke. You can't hire me now. So what is it you want to talk?
Things were not, we as a board just weren't on top of it. But meanwhile, the executive director was doing this, lots of stuff for kids, lots of stuff for seniors, and I was so pleased and secretly relieved because, well, she was getting paid, and I was a volunteer. The rest of us were volunteers. But when that new director came in, I didn't trust her. I mean, she was a wheeler and a dealer.
And that man, the director, he calls me up. He says, I want to talk to you. I don't want to talk to you. I don't think I'll be very nice for you to talk to. He said, well, I'm coming over. I'm going to park myself across from your house and I'm going to wait for you. And as soon as you come out, I'm going to grab you. And even if I have to sit on you, you're going to talk to me. I said, okay. You tell me your story, I'll tell you mine. I said, when the time came to allocate the money, you didn't hire us. You didn't offer me, so I can make one down. He said, I know I made a mistake. I said, yeah, you sure did. He said, they robbed the center. I said, oh. So now you're in the same place you started, right? But you got a building, right? He got bills. He said, yeah. Okay. I'll come on over. He said, that's just what I wanted to hear. So I walk into the center, and it's like a bomb went off in there. It's all lit up and decorated. Surprise, surprise, and congratulations, and you coming back? Okay. So I just got my seniors, and I started rolling. Then this beautiful little girl comes walking across the parking lot, and I said, oh boy, here we go again. And I showed her the format of the things I'd been doing with my seniors, but she didn't want to do that. Oh no, she wanted me to bake pies and cakes. She wanted me to sew blankets and things to sell, to make money for the center. I said, no.
There is no question that the internal management was, lacked a lot of the resources. And I'm not just talking about money. I'm talking about vision and a lot of other things. There was a lot to be desired from the planning, the design, conceptualization of what was supposed to have happened there. But you know, I remember, right after the center closed, that the bowling alley was having trouble, and the community come together. I said to myself, those are such clear symbols of people's perceptions and preferences, and without even judging anything right or wrong, good or bad, there they are. The community center didn't just die, it was killed. And it was killed by lack of vision, lack of caring, lack of support, and it could have been, that's the saddest thing, it could have been that thing that really brought communities together. But it was perceived as a black center and a black program.
There's been a lot of car break-ins in the neighborhood. Because people they park on the street because they don't have any place to park, and they just come along and they take whatever's in your car. And it's not a pleasant thought because you don't even want to rent, and then you have to park on the street. And sometimes you gotta go to sleep. I mean, and at night you gotta park here sometimes. And you know, people who are newer to the neighborhood or who come in to go to a bar or something, and they just come along, they get their window busted in, and your little phone, your cell phone, they would steal that, and the purpose of why they do it is they want the drugs.
The neighborhood is generally quiet. I mean, you know, I'll go out late and I'll come home late. I never really felt nervous. Like, I've never really felt nervous coming home late. I've never felt nervous in this neighborhood. But going up and down Farmington Avenue, you know, there'll be cops parked all along the road in just these different areas, and you know, I saw another cop car, I'm like, why? But just knowing that there are people, like there are cops around, just like stationed around the road, makes you feel a little bit safer, just knowing they're there.
You know, I realized the other day, I was like, why haven't I been walking? Oh right, that's why, because of street harassment.
And the house break-ins too. Sometimes that's a lot too. You know, you leave your house to go to work and you put on your alarm, but they know also, these people, they know how to get into a house.
We just had a grocery store robbery on my street. It can get messy because some people, they don't have any food, they don't have any money, or they don't get a job, so they normally get into petty crimes.
You know, it's one thing for you to stop and objectify me. It's a completely different thing for you to pull over and expect to be, you know, given my time and communication. And I feel obligated to give it because I'm afraid of violence and harassment.
I'm particularly mindful of a comment that was made to me, maybe a year or so ago, especially in light of Trayvon Martin. There are barriers in this neighborhood, okay? I mean, a friend of mine who's lived in the West End for, I don't know, 10, 15 years, the north side of the avenue, African American, well, her nephew was walking down the street, and this guy comes out of his house and says, "Where are you going? What are you doing here?" So her nephew said, "Well, I'm going to visit my aunt." And he said, "Well, who's your aunt?" So here's this white guy who thinks he's protecting the neighborhood from riffraff coming in here and, you know, causing trouble. Because there's this assumption that anytime there's this isn't my mindset, my worldview, but anytime there's any kind of crime or something, invariably it's someone who's African American, who's coming in here to take advantage of us. And you know, we don't want that happening now, do we?
The corner of Farmington and Evergreen, where like the mobile gas station is, that's a pretty bad corner. I mean, there was this one time before I moved here that I was driving through, and they had the entire area blocked off, like tape and police cars, and you know, I guess someone had gotten shot like a few streets over, and they kind of wandered a few blocks onto Farmington Avenue, and you know, people called the police, and you just couldn't get by.
That Some of them are involved in illegal activity, and that in turn brings in other risk factors.
I mean, just trying to get onto Farmington Avenue from Evergreen is like a death trap right there. I mean, I don't want to have to deal with all of that.
And me, being just a bystander, can get injured due to somebody else's choices, and that's not fair.
Farmington Avenue, it's very open. I mean, they talk about it very openly. The drug dealing is blatant, the prostitution is blatant.
Public safety is not an issue.
Not an issue. I know some people think it is, but it's not an issue. I mean, there's violent crime and carjackings.
Or the murders.
And the murders, but they're all drug cases. We have a really bad drug problem. There was a drug factory that was busted over on Vale Street about 2 weeks ago. So yeah, we've got some bad stuff going on. But then again, if you're not out at 4 in the morning and surrounded by drugs, you're not going to get shot at. So what kind of crime do we deal with? Well, there's car windows that get smashed in, especially if you leave your GPS out. And occasionally there's a home break-in and maybe they'll take your purse. But you know what? That happens in Farmington. That happens in West Hartford. It's not just a Hartford thing, it's a criminal thing. So, no, we don't have a public safety issue.
I just like communal living. I mean, I like apartment living.
Oh yeah, I've dealt with housing discrimination. If I hadn't found this place, I probably would have moved to Middletown.
Now, there are 27 units in my building, and I'm the only owner that live there. Got 26 unit owners that live elsewhere, gathering rent, and all they want is that money.
I think most of the neighborhood, 2/3 of it, are renters, but the board is dominated by homeowners, and that's who tends to come to the meetings.
I'm low income, I'm mother of 3. That's just a big red sign of don't rent to her.
Oh, slumlords in the West End? Oh yeah, there are. I actually, the first apartment that I had when I first originally moved here, it was really nice and clean and quiet. And then, you know, as time progressed, like after a couple of months, we got new people that moved in, and I feel like the apartment management wasn't screening as well. And, you know, sometimes there'd be trash in the hallways, and some of the tenants would be really loud.
And the illegal apartments? I mean, like, it's in an attic, and there's no fire escape, and they just put a stove in there, and I'm like, that's an apartment. Or I'll call a landlord, and they'll be in Massachusetts or New York, and I'll ask them, I'll say, so what end of Capitol Avenue is this on? And they're like, I don't know, I'm not in Hartford.
Sometimes there are issues between landlords and tenants, because you know when you pick someone to be a tenant, you also bring their baggage in with them, and sometimes that can be the drug problem.
We have about 2 or 3 major property owners on Sisson, on South Whitney, who are, you know, controversial. And before those buildings were purchased, there were slumlords, and it was horrendous. There were rats and garbage and feces. It was a disaster.
I've been living here for 3.5 years. Yep, 3.5. En este apartamento, pero no me gusta mucho porque está más pequeño. ¿Qué pasa? Tiene mucho lines, cracks, así, así, así. Cuando entra, el apartamento no tiene mucho, pero now, open, a little bit open, the ceiling open, I'm scared. I go section A, I wanna move, but I don't know. Oh, I get this, 2 days, 2 días pasaron. I sleeping like that. And then me, wow, me scratch, And we wake up and say, I see. Mira aquí. You see that little hole? Nothing for sale. A long time. The people they come through, they do the inspection for the bed bugs. They say no bed bugs, no nothing. But there's something around my house because the building's old. I like the neighborhood. It's a good neighborhood. Me gusta mucho. No problema con nobody. But the apartments, the landlord, the people, they say, I scared. But they say, oh no, the boss passed through, he fixed. The building code.
There's a divide if you go 3 blocks one way on Prospect or 3 blocks on the other side of Farmington.
There is a huge cultural divide between the north and the south side of Farmington Avenue. I mean, over the years, I heard some comments, like, oh yeah, we looked at a house over there, but we don't like that side of Farmington, stuff like that, or, you live on the south side? There's the Dine Around, which is it's an elitist event that people pay a lot of money to go to, but it does raise a lot of money, and it does allow people to interact because they have some scholarship slots or something like that, I think.
You have single mothers living in 1-bedroom apartments with 3 kids. Like, that's a problem. So, providing services like maybe a backpack program, toy drive, turkey drive, maybe a parenting program, financial literacy program to help people get educated with how to utilize their money. Yeah, you might be getting state, but that's not a paycheck.
South of Farmington? Oh, well, we don't really have a connection there. That's where it falls apart, is that area, that geographic area. Every other sector, there are people that are interested in Wicca and have a sense of what's going on in the community.
And there's a whole host of reasons for that. I mean, some of it is the language issue. I mean, it's where it has the largest percentages of Hispanic residents, Latino residents. And we do not have a single Spanish-speaking person on the Wicca board. Some of it is, the simple fact that, for better or for worse, it is the lower economic and socioeconomic income, right? People are much harder people who are working, are unemployed, or underemployed, working 2 jobs, just trying to survive, don't have time to go to meetings. They don't have time to be part of the activities. They don't have time to go to the park on a Thursday night to watch the movies that Wicca sponsors. They don't have time for that stuff.
There was some concern that there wouldn't be enough gardens south of Farmington Avenue on that garden tour. Most of the gardens were estate-type gardens. There were a few smaller ones, and I was happy to fill that niche. But I think that says a lot about our vision of the community, where, for example, in Buffalo, if you want to be part of the garden tour, you just put up a little sign and that's it. This was like fancy planning, with artist painting and poetry, which was all very nice, but I think I saw maybe 2 people of color at my house, and I can't imagine that a person of color would go to an estate garden for the most part. So that is what I want to do in my community, is to break down those barriers, bring people together and focus on what we have in common.
We had Garden of the Weekend, and it was gorgeous. Just what I do, right? But you know what I really like? You know, over there, what they have over there are not houses, they have mansions. And in the winter, they have this dine around the West End, and it is so nice. And the tickets are like $80, but mine is free. And one year, I said, can I get an escort? And they said, okay, you can have an escort, okay. And those people over there, I tell you, they are so nice.
The block party, going on about maybe 14 years.
Oh yeah, that is so nice.
And every year, it has gotten bigger. Every year, it has gotten bigger, 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 bigger.
Bigger, bigger, bigger.
And the whole street, I mean, play music and we eat, and it's a joyful time.
The West End is just gorgeous. I tell you, I like to come out in the morning and look up and down the block. It is so beautiful. And they said evergreen, they meant it. Evergreen. I mean, just look up and down this block. It is beautiful. I'll just come out in the morning and just look up and down. I love it here. I love it here, okay? Back in May with my wife and 2 kids. I'm glad for this forum because I want to engage in a meaningful way, so I'm open to help. How do we bring the two sides together? How do we get the neighborhood more invested in Noah Webster? How many West End families that want to go to Noah Webster don't get in?
Yes.
I know of people personally who live in this area who up and moved to West Hartford or Simsbury once their kids became school age because they didn't want them in Noah Webster or Quirk. Good folks, but yes, that happened. Where is the bus stop with the center median? What is the real issue? So what we like to do with these conversations is open up to you. Do you have any answers to these? Does this bring up more questions for you? Yes.
Yeah, I have 3 adult kids who went to Noah Webster, Cork, and Hartford Public High School, and I tutor in Noah Webster, and it does appear to be a mostly African American and Latino school. But I see great behavior, I see great learning outcomes, and it's no less diverse, it's probably more diverse than it was towards the end when my kids went there. I wonder how many people in the neighborhood of any color don't get into the lottery to go to Noah Webster, because if there's a lot of people in the neighborhood and it is a somewhat diverse neighborhood who want to go there, maybe we can work on the percentage of kids in the neighborhood that could go to Noah Webster.
It's my impression that, and this is like definitely hearsay, but you know, up until recently, it was like, okay, if you had a kindergartner, if you didn't get in as a 3-year-old or 4-year-old, that there was some spots that were saved for community at kindergarten, but that's not the case anymore. So the lottery is the lottery, and there's like, that's what it is. So there's a lot of, I know of a few families who get into the lottery for the neighborhood school, you know, that live in the West End. And I think that's kind of outrageous. If you want to walk to your neighborhood school, you should be able to walk to your neighborhood school. So that's my impression. And I think that the lottery all around has gotten like much more, you know, blind to like who people are and where they live and what the color of their skin is, and it's a lottery. It's a lottery, and I don't even know. I guess it is working for the 70-30. They're trying to make sure that there's at least 30% whites and 70% non-white, but I'm not even sure that's true.
Well, I think they're not allowed to use an explicit racial percentage.
Right.
So they get to that by having 50% suburban kids.
Right.
And it does appear to be that more suburban kids of color than would be the percentage in their towns want to come to magnet schools in the city. So I think that speaks volumes about what their experience is living in a suburban, predominantly white town.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's happened. Does anybody know? I mean, I know there's a lot of concern about it. I don't know what's happened in terms of getting to the Board of Ed or talking to the, talking points about it.
It would be a state thing, it's a law.
Right.
The lottery is not Board of Ed. You have to work with your legislators to change the law, or go back to court with
I
John.
mean, you guys deal with a lottery too, right? And it's blind also. It's kind of like just whatever.
It's done by town. It's for us, it's 50% Hartford and then 50% everywhere else.
They teach at a magnet school.
Yeah, they
It's a
teach
magnet
at-
high school.
Right.
Correct.
That's performing arts school.
Yes, right. The best performing arts school in the country. Yay!
So we're gonna put some other issues and thoughts into the pot, see what bubbles.
So we're new to the area and have broader interests in building up / strengthening other parts of Hartford. How about our neighbors in the north end? But if we struggle to bridge the gap between north of Farmington and south of Farmington, then I'm a little discouraged about our prospects in Hartford as a whole. I want to be able to be hopeful. Grocery stores are extremely important. 24-hour ones, less so. Definitely agree.
I'm so glad you made that.
I do. I think 24 hours. Houses, lots of things being stolen off porches, house break-ins. Lack of police help with community and crime. That's one. What do you want at Braza? Okay. Sorry. How big are these problems? Drugs, slumlords. Too big to address?
Thoughts? Lots there, yeah?
I have a thought about the lack of police support when it comes to the community. I'm an Evergreen resident, and we get a lot of hanging out, just hanging out. And I'm a single female. I like to think that I'm attractive. And I get a lot of negative attention. We have prostitution, we have drug abuse, and the building I live in is just over the last 2 years have gotten so bad. I'm actually moving out. But you're gonna miss the West End. It sucks because it's such a beautiful area. But when you call the police, let's say you got a group of people hanging out in front of the street, in front of your apartment building, and then they don't live there and they're up to no good, and you call them, it's like they want you to come out and tell them so that the people know you called the cops. I live there. Like, why would I want to come out? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just,
That's why
it's a little scary. It's like, okay, so why am I calling you? What do I do? Do I go out there, stand out there with a bat? Like, what do I do? It's like, it's a little scary. I wish we could see a little bit more of, we have a police presence, but you just sitting in your car on your laptop or on your phone isn't effective. It just isn't. And I feel bad for anyone that's a police officer. No offense to you or to if you know someone that is, but I think it needs to be said because, I know I'm not the only one in the room that feels this way. Please show your hands.
Yeah, I think that they need to be more invested in the neighborhood too. I mean, we've had, we're homeowners on the south end of, south of Farmington on Oxford, and we've had many things stolen from our backyard. We have to chain things up, and they just say, well, that's the price you pay for living in the city. It's like, it's not that big of a city, first of all. I mean, I could see in New York or Boston. It's Hartford. I grew up here, but It's just sort of that lack of empathy and understanding, and they're just kind of, I mean, sometimes they're quick to respond. Our neighbors had, their teenage girls were home and they had some guys trying to get in the house. And apparently they called the police and they didn't show up.
Oh my God.
Luckily the mom just said, get out of the house, go down the street, and we never found out what happened. They just didn't show up. I mean, and they have responded with us before, but I just think there's no lack of understanding that, you know, this is our neighborhood.
And to piggyback off of that, I have a temper. I'm Puerto Rican, so it's in the blood. And I occasionally do go off on somebody in the street because they're very disrespectful. Call the cops on me, they're like this. Like this! And I pay my taxes, I'm a good citizen, I give back to my community. You quick to arrest me, but when they're doing drug deals and having sex right in my little nook of an apartment, nothing. I got crack pipes in the back of my car, come on. Like, really? Really? This is scary.
Yeah. I just want to add to that. I mean, I'm in the North End. I have a little relationship with the police department. 2 years ago, I sat down with the chief and I talked to him because I really had a problem. I heard 4 officers was talking about, hey, I don't care, man. These people they're monsters, they're savages. I don't know why we respond to some of the calls. And when I heard that, and I'm looking at the officers, and I was like, you should be careful sometimes with things you say around people because you don't know who people are. So I talked to the chief. I said, I had a couple of officers talking about people in the community and stuff like that. I said, how many officers are from the city? And when he told me the number, I was sad to see that there's more outsider cops who are officers in the city of Hartford than people who are from the city cops. So that's where our disconnect comes from. That there are a lot of outside people who are not from the city who know Hartford. That's why they feel, since it's not their community, they really don't care that much, which is kind of sad because they're here to protect and serve. And when I told him that, he said, well, we're doing our best. I told him, what you should do is, listen, I was born in the 80s, get your officers back out the car, have them start walking in the community, get to know the folks so they can bring the connect back. He goes, well, I don't know if we can do that because of the heightened crime and how some of our officers are at risk. I said, we are at risk. Are you serious? So, I mean, it was a big debate. But, I mean, there is some change, but it's not significant to where it should be. So, with the new chief, I haven't had, I mean, to talk to him, but I mean, I am cool with a lot of officers who graduated with me in high school. I mean, we still, we share the same bonds and they have the same problems and they say there are some things that they wish they can do, but their hands are tied. So, I mean, with that being said, I mean, as a body, if we don't make the noise, they say the squeaky wheel gets the oil. Yeah. If we don't keep coming with the problems and the issues, it's just going to stay the same.
So who do you make the noise to, though? Who are you?
Well, most of the time I'm talking to, of course, sometimes the chief, but also I'll talk to the deputy chief, and also some of the, I bring it to the North End Society. I talk to some of the people on the board there and say, hey, listen, we got to do more things, and also bring it to my supervisors who I work for the rec department. And I talk to some of those guys too, and let them hear some of the concerns, because when I hear the youth talking about it, then they can have more pull than I do. So I'm just a little personal to them.
We're gonna go 1 and then 2.
I was just saying, right now is a great time to kind of voice our opinions to the police department because there's a lot of change going on. They had a huge hiring spree in the mid-90s when all the gang violence was pretty bad in Hartford, and that was 20, 25 years ago. So all those policemen are retiring. So right now there's a huge shortage. I'm 26 years old, so a lot of kids I went to high school with, a couple years younger than my age, are now kind of going through the hiring process. So they're hiring a couple of classes. So it's a great time, when these new officers do end up on the street, if we can, maintain a different, type of interaction, it's a great opportunity.
I'm just kind of piggybacking on what you said. I had someone that I knew, kind of a friend that I worked with, this was maybe 10 years ago, who was a security guard in a really important building here in the West End. And he applied to the police department, and he was a great guy. He did a wonderful job. He was beloved. He was good with people, and he was turned down. and he still, I don't know what he is now, but after that he continued as a security guard.
It's a good time to reapply, not to.
Yeah. Well, he might be too old now, you know, because this was a while ago. But I mean, so what you're saying, and you know, he was familiar with the town and everything, and they turned him away. He was Latino.
Right, just to add real quick, I'm sorry. The process with the police, how they pick, I had 4 people who go out, they pass the physical, pass the written, then they get picked to go to the academy. As soon as they do that, they freeze. And then if they freeze the academy for too long, those 4 people who picked, if it's a year, they expire and they're no longer validated candidates. So then they gotta go back through the process again. So the problem is, from the hiring date to getting into the academy is the problem. So then the mayor will freeze, like, well, I gotta stop hiring because of budget. But that's where a lot of it happens at. And I had 6 guys, 2 got picked from Hartford. The other guys got dropped because the hiring took too long. So that's a dilemma right there.
Can I add something? I work at Knox, and we hire Hartford residents. It's part of our policy. It's part of our mission. You know, and I think if you're going to be policing a city, then you should know the city. You should live in the city. You should be invested in that city. And I think it needs to be some kind of, like, right into the job description. You know, or you could hire a group, but then send them to their town. You know what I'm saying? We could have a little bit of diversity, but it should be like at least 70% Hartford residents that are police officers in Hartford. Because otherwise it's just not effective. Calling the mayor, calling the mayor.
That's a great place to go for ideas and solutions for current problems. And some of the things that came up are need opportunities for folks to gather and talk. Monthly potluck at United Methodist Church might work. And miss the neighborhood school. Regional affordable housing should solve segregation, not the schools. More diverse board members. I think this is weaker board members. Community involvement idea for Yukon Law. Offer free civics classes for residents. Many of us, in light of recent national events, don't really know what our rights are. Such classes, well advertised, could help there. More block parties or block partnerships across economic racial divides. More focus on after-school programs. A South Side community watch. Relaxed zoning so adults not in the same family can live together in a community. So what other, I guess, ideas, solutions for current problems? Anything that came up for you and you heard those ideas from your neighbors? Yeah.
I don't know if this is kind of like a idealized dream, but I've always thought it would be great to just start a school, to start a really amazing school where everything in it made sense. It wasn't based on old-fashioned ideas that, you know, are outdated, where people come because they really want to learn. And if you're providing true education, who doesn't want to learn? Everyone does. It's just how you're going about it that makes it whether, you know, people are resisting it. And the foundation on which our educational system in general, maybe not the magnet schools so much, but a lot of the other public schools, is just based on something that doesn't work at all. You know, it should be something that, you know, people are real participants in, and why can't we do something like that?
So I just moved to the West End about 3-4 months ago. So I'm just learning, like, this show was really informative as far as the issues. Going back to the police thing, I feel like and just in general, I feel like there needs to be, like, awareness training. How, especially for the police officers, there should be some program that they're like, okay, this is how you have to look at things objectively. Like, don't catch yourself, you know, you might catch yourself falling into this trap of expressing prejudice, or, you know, you see somebody and all of a sudden you think these things that just aren't appropriate to and helpful for completing your job. And I think that a neighborhood watch is a fabulous idea. The one thing that I live on South Whitney, and the one like really interesting thing for me was I notice if there's any sort of conflict in the street, like the neighbors will come out and get involved in that, you know, they'll pick sides, whatever, but they're active. Like they'll come out and they'll be like, what is going on here? And try and resolve issues. And I think that's something that's totally doable.
There used to be a neighborhood watch in the West End. A lot of the things that you're talking about used to exist, you know, and then they died out for who knows why, but as the neighborhood changed.
Who was the lead? Who were the leads on that? Do you recall?
Neighborhoods.
Was it weekly?
No, I think
So
that
maybe
people
we started
like
another
elected officer neighborhoods.
It was that period, they had a little office, they had a little office right before that.
Like, yeah, I just moved to
Sign on the
Southwood
window that said block
there,
watch,
and
they were all
I only see police officers pass by.
No.
They always just pass by. There's none that are walking around the streets. There are nobody, you know. They always just seem to pass by, go somewhere else, and if they get a call over there, then they go over there. But for the most part, they want nothing to do with that whole area. They want nothing to do with it. And you know, at that point, I don't know. I feel like, you know, a neighborhood watch would, you know, to take it into our own hands and take care of things ourselves, because it's our town and our neighborhood. And you know, whether it's because they don't have the funding for the police to go out and walk around, or even be properly trained or anything like that, like then we got to take it into kind of our own hands and take care of that stuff, and you know, hold them accountable, but you know, hold ourselves accountable as well to take care of our community.
What happened to those little police stations?
Yeah.
Isn't there one on
Yeah, there
Whitney
was.
and
Yeah,
Court?
in the corner.
Is that still, are there people there?
I don't know.
Yeah.
When they go
I
right
thought
there.
David Yano like policed
There was
something.
one at the
Used
bottom
to.
of Warrington Avenue and
Years.
South Whitney, but that's not there anymore.
Oh, that used to
No,
be
I
there,
don't
right?
see
There was
that.
one, there was
No,
one.
private owners.
It's not even a
using
crossing
space.
guard
There
anymore.
was one near Brazos.
And there was
I'm
one
gonna
on
take our neighbor
Gerard,
right here.
So,
where Arrow
I live in the
Farms.
Yeah,
south
that's
end,
it, yeah.
and we were having some problems with some drug dealing going on, and one thing that really worked was calling the community officer. And so we had a bunch of neighbors got together one night with the community officer coming over and talking to him about what we're seeing and what's going on, and building a relationship with him kind of helped to diffuse the situation, because it was starting to get a little too heated between a couple neighbors. One was complaining about the other one dealing drugs, and some threats were being exchanged and stuff. And so getting the community officer and him seeing that this isn't a personal thing, that this is really going on, and so for them to get involved. And I think when people come together and they know that you've been told, so the officer's been told what's going on, they can't deny they didn't know, that they start to get involved. And so you start to get information, like we got his direct email, because so when you call the police, he's saying it goes to a dispatch, the dispatch will then, and then there's all these priorities, so he may not get to it for like a couple hours. So when you get the direct number or the direct email, then he can come right away.
What's
So
the community officer's name?
Sure.
Joe Sherbo.
Yeah, I have his direct cell phone in my cell phone saved. I mean, the week, one of the most recent emails shared that information with everyone.
And he,
So that was
he
kinda
does
nice.
come to the WICA meeting and gives sort of like a report. I know that's true for all of the NRZs.
Yeah.
It's one of the things where our Silent Hill residents, HartBeat is. And I think one of the most insightful things is going to that monthly NRZ meeting and hearing, you know, like right now we're dealing with ATVs. Like that's like the huge, push for police officers in our neighborhood right now is getting ATVs off of the streets. And so when other neighbors come to the meeting and say, wait, what? I mean, that's great. No, we don't want ATVs on the street, but I have crack pipes on my car or what have you. It sort of refocuses the conversation. It's like a four-wheeler, like a
They don't belong in the regular streets, really.
Yes.
Going on the whole issue of policing, community policing, I think for our area, our neighborhoods, it would be very important to make sure, or for those officers, if we ever got to that point again, to make sure that if they are policing the community, they're doing it with an open mind, because the issue of, for lack of a better word, race did come up, and it has come up as I've seen it. Because I used to, years ago, I lived on Liquor Street, and pretty much across the street from Elizabeth Park. And on that side where those young kids just love to play basketball, they were mostly black and Latino kids, boys. And I saw once or twice where, you know, there were some issues about, well, yeah, what are you doing here? Like, playing basketball. But, you know, there was, you know, I would hear little grumbling of people who were, you know, like, oh, well, they're here, what does that mean? There's more than two of them. You know, and chances are those kids live in the West End somewhere, even if it was Evergreen Avenue, or if it was, you know, somewhere off Sisson, wherever, or just we're city residents, what have you. They have the right to be there as much as anybody, you know, who lives there. But, you know, we get this notion that if you buy a house and you have a yard and you pay property taxes, that, you know, that's it. You know, that, this is ours, and you know, the open air, it doesn't matter. This belongs to us because we paid some entity for it, whereas the space belongs to everybody. So I would hope that, you know, if we did go along those community policing lines, that they had that open mind, that they don't just view, you know, 6 black kids playing ball or just walking along, whatever, that they're potentially going to rob someone, because, you know, you can't have that. So I would, you know, if this were to come about again, that would be important, and that would be a major, I think, a major shift in the way that the West End operates, really, because that you know, it's something that gets swept under the carpet, but it's there, and it's real, and it's palpable. So I think that's important.
And if the police were more in tune with the neighborhood, they would know that those kids live there, and it wouldn't be a big deal. They're just playing basketball. So that's the other thing, is that people need to know who their neighbors are and who the kids are, and be okay with that, because they're their neighbors.
Well, a big problem with police training and stuff like that is I had a best friend, and he became a police officer, and he was a completely changed man when he became a cop. They train you to be completely disconnected with whatever is going on, unfortunately, and that's how they train them to do, because it's the law. They have to abide by the law, and if they don't abide by the law, then at that point they're just arrested, and they're not human beings at that point. At that point, they're incarcerated, and they can't go around in the neighborhood and think of these people as just potential, you know, people committing crimes and stuff like that. Like, they have to see the community as individuals, and they have to have a heart, and unfortunately with the training that they have, it doesn't allow them to do that. And that's a big issue, especially nowadays with what's going on there too. And I've been saying it for a long time, police training is really bad.
Yeah, because that has that militaristic.
Yeah, it's very militaristic, and
Yeah.
it's not good.
And that's what happened in Ferguson.
Yeah, all that stuff you can definitely see out there, and then you can see it as a micro, you know, thing that's happening around cities and towns and stuff like that. It's just police are disconnected from their communities, and they don't really care too much whether you're black or white or whatever is going on out there. It's a community thing. It's not just a race thing. It's also all people. I think that there is a race thing going on out there too, but I feel like this should be a concern for everybody. Not.
Yeah, 2 things. One, I'm hearing you get to know your neighbors, get to know the kids, and there's something to be said for the conversation about Noah Webster, because getting to know the kids in the neighborhood really starts there. If you're not all meeting at Noah Webster when they're 5, you have no sense of who they are when they're 15. You've never seen them. And this police thing is really palpable and on the minds of West Enders, and that's wonderful to hear from your community on both sides of Farmington. Finally, what can we do to make this the neighborhood you want?
So support for a piano bar / live music stage.
You got some cabaret stars.
Tapas, cocktails, and braza.
That's what you do with Braza, Karen.
There you go.
Find out what type of businesses folks want and ask the city to solicit responses from interested businesses. Revisit community center.
Yeah.
Let 68 Scarborough stay.
So those are our potential solutions. Are there anything you want to add before we leave each other this evening?
I'd like to see a lot more art around in the community. I don't think that I see enough of it. There's definitely not enough of that. You know, the flower beds and all that stuff, that's cool, but, you know, like when you walk around in Queens or Brooklyn or something like that, you see buildings that are painted and it's really nice, and you see just really nice things going on around in the community, and that would be really nice to see, something big.
Yeah, just piggybacking off of that, my father is a public artist and he does a lot of murals. And his big thing is involving the community.
Yeah.
You know, he'll get sponsoring and all sorts of people will donate stuff, like he'll do mosaics and he'll get, you know, tile companies to donate and just get he did it in New Britain on the side of the YMCA, got everybody involved. It was like a 48-hour thing. And it really changes everything. Because all of a sudden you have neighbors that are talking to each other, that are putting up little things, and they're directly just tactile, knowing that you were a part of creating this thing that is now making the neighborhood more beautiful is just really cool. And I think that's a great idea.
Yes. I just had a thought. It's December. You've already had a snowfall, and more is probably yet to come. What? I'm mostly a pedestrian, and what is there any way that we in this neighborhood or in this area could figure out how to deal with people putting them to the fire for removing their snow when it gets insane?
Sidewalks.
Yeah. Because it's all over the place. It's all over the city, of course, but like, it can just be so lopsided. You'll have people who do a bang-ass job and then people who are just like, for whatever reason, and I know there are different reasons, but then you just have piles of white crap in front of you, but it's just like.
And there are ordinances or so. I mean, homeowners are supposed to, they are responsible for clearing their sidewalk by a certain time frame. So I wonder, like, if somebody doesn't, can you call like that 311 number, the town?
But you know what's hard about that is when you're walking, you're confronted with the snow. Nobody, I mean, that phone call's too late, you know. Because I come in from the suburbs. I take an express bus and transfer to a local bus to the West End, which totally blew the express bus drivers. They were totally didn't understand that I was actually going to be using a local bus. But anyway, I think we've got past that.
Struggle.
And in the winter, there was a snowstorm where the local buses were so slow. So I said, okay, I'm going to walk to Etna and get the express bus. But I ran into that. There were some sidewalks that were fine, and then I was in the street.
Yeah, it's about, I mean, I think in general, besides the sidewalks, the streets, the plowing, all of that is a mess.
We are an anomaly in a city. When I first moved back here a year ago, I was always shocked by that like, here I was working in a city that I could get around in mass transportation, but the infrastructure around that was not available. And I talk all the time that in addition to these opportunities for art, for us to meet our neighbors, it's on the street where we start to feel comfortable with the people who are around us. And so when we talk to our NRZs and we talk about how do we revitalize, how do we make those changes, sometimes it's as simple as, right, can you so I can get
Can you
over
call
on the
a
street.
local church and have kids come and do community service hours and shovel for you?
So I want to invite invite you all to continue the conversation with each other in the lobby. We'll still have cocktails and stuff out there if you want to indulge. I want to thank you all so much for coming this evening, for participating in this conversation, for bringing to light the things that are happening in your neighborhood. We encourage you to continue to listen, participate, and change. Thank you.